I'd been working nights at Carlsbad Caverns for 11 months when things started getting weird. Not that the job was ever exactly normal. You spend enough time 750 feet underground, and everything starts feeling a little off. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The shift was simple enough on paper. I came in around 4 in the afternoon, helped with the last tours of the day, guided groups through the big room until sunset. That part was fine. The big room's massive, bigger than 6 football fields, and even after almost a year I still found new formations to look at. Stalactites the size of telephone poles. Stalagmites that took thousands of years to grow a single inch. Tourists loved it. I gave them the standard spiel about the cave's formation, pointed out the landmarks, answered questions about bats and temperature and how deep we were. Easy work. After the last tour headed up around 6:30, that's when my real shift started. I had the whole cavern system mostly to myself. Just me and maybe one other person on duty, usually Leo if he was working that week. We'd split up the monitoring duties. Someone had to check the bat flight amphitheater every hour during migration season, make sure the motion sensors were working, that nothing had disturbed the colonies. Someone had to watch the climate control systems, check humidity levels, temperature readings, make sure all that expensive equipment the Park Service installed was doing its job, keeping the formations from degrading. I didn't mind the quiet. That's why I'd taken the job in the first place. After 2 years managing a sporting goods store in Roswell, with fluorescent lights and a boss who thought motivational posters counted as leadership, I wanted something different. Something that didn't involve dealing with customers asking if we sold alien merchandise because they'd seen it in the movies. The New Mexico desert above ground felt right to me. I'd grown up in Kansas, and the openness reminded me of home. Flat horizons, big sky, air so dry it pulled moisture right out of your lungs. I liked driving out to the park each afternoon, watching the Guadalupe Mountains rise up from the scrubland, all that empty space around me. Made sense in my head. Desert's supposed to be harsh and quiet and a little hostile, that's just what it is. The caverns, though. Different story. They never stopped feeling wrong to me. Especially after dark, after the last visitors cleared out and the floodlights in the big room dimmed to their overnight setting. The limestone walls had this quality I couldn't quite name. Sometimes I'd be doing my rounds, just walking the paved paths with my headlamp, and I'd get this feeling that the walls were breathing. Not moving exactly, just this sense of rhythm that didn't match my own. I'd stop and listen and hear nothing but water dripping somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of climate control vents. But the feeling didn't go away. I figured it was just the usual cave stuff. Your brain playing tricks because you're underground. I'd read about it during training. Something about the constant temperature and humidity, the darkness, the way sound travels weird in enclosed spaces, messes with your perception. Made sense. I didn't think about it too hard. During my first week on the job, Crystal Cooper called me into her office. She was my supervisor, had been working at Carlsbad for something like 30 years, knew the caverns better than anyone. She had this way of looking at you that made you stand up straighter without realizing it. Gray eyes that didn't blink much. Voice that sounded like she'd spent too many years breathing dry air and not enough time talking. "You're doing fine with the basic procedures," she said. "Learning the routes, handling the monitoring equipment. That's good." I nodded. Wasn't sure where this was going. She pulled a laminated card from her desk drawer. Standard size, like something you'd keep in a wallet. "This is supplemental protocol for overnight staff. 7 procedures. You need to keep this with you during every shift." I took the card. It was heavier than I expected. The lamination was thick, professional. The text was printed in dark blue ink, numbered 1 through 7. I skimmed the first line. Something about limestone temperature variations. "File it somewhere you'll remember," Crystal said. "In your locker is fine. You probably won't need it often, but when you do, you need to follow it exactly. No improvising. Clear?" "Clear," I said. She held my eyes for a second longer than felt comfortable, I mean it, Maurice. Exactly as written. Got it. That was it. She didn't explain what the procedures covered or why they were separate from the standard safety manual we'd all studied. I figured it was some kind of legacy thing. Maybe old protocol from before the Park Service updated their systems. Cave work had a lot of that. Outdated rules that nobody bothered removing from the books. I filed the card in my locker like she'd told me, stuck it in the top shelf behind my spare batteries and a protein bar I kept forgetting to eat. Didn't look at it again. Didn't think I'd need to. The next 11 months were pretty routine. I learned the cavern's layout by heart, memorized which formations were fragile, which sections had the most bad activity, where the humidity sensors tended to malfunction. I got comfortable with the overnight quiet. Leo and I developed a system where we'd check in by radio every couple hours, just to break up the silence. He was good company, didn't talk much, didn't ask personal questions. We'd swap stories about weird tourists sometimes, that was about it. October came around. Migration season was winding down. The bat colonies were smaller, less active. My rounds got shorter. More time spent in the monitoring station near the elevator, watching security feeds and climate readouts on screens that were probably 10 years old, and running software that looked even older. It was a Thursday, late October, 23rd, I think. I'd come in at 4 like always, run 2 tours through the big room, checked the amphitheater sensors, verified the overnight climate settings. Everything normal. Around 9, I headed to the monitoring station with a thermos of coffee that had already gone lukewarm and a sandwich from the visitor center vending machine. Turkey and Swiss on white bread that tasted like cardboard. That's me, living the dream. The monitoring station was basically a closet with delusions of grandeur. Desk, 3 monitors, a radio-based station, a chair that squeaked every time I shifted my weight. One monitor showed the security camera feeds on rotation, 12 cameras total, cycling every 10 seconds. Another monitor displayed climate data and real-time graphs that I'd learned to read but still found pretty boring. The third was supposed to be for maintenance logs, but I mostly used it to check my email when the park's Wi-Fi decided to cooperate. I was halfway through my sandwich when I noticed the elevator indicator light. We had one main elevator that ran from the visitor center down to the cavern level. Big industrial thing, could fit 30 people if they squeezed. During the day, it ran constantly, bringing tour groups down and back up. At night, it was supposed to stay parked at the surface level unless someone called it. There was a secondary service elevator that went down to the underground lunchroom at 750 feet, but that one required a key card. Staff only. The indicator light showed the service elevator at 750. Down position. That bugged me a little. I was the only person on shift in the caverns. Leo had called in sick that afternoon. I hadn't used the service elevator all night. Hadn't even been near that section. I pulled up the security camera feed for the lunchroom level. Took me a second to find the right camera in the rotation. Camera 9. There. The elevator car sat empty. Doors wide open, interior lights flickering, not flickering random. That's what got me. The pattern was too regular. On, off, on, off. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. Over and over. I watched it for maybe 30 seconds, just sat there with my sandwich in one hand, staring at the monitor. The elevator didn't move. The lights kept flickering. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats, pause. Weird, but not impossible. Electrical short, maybe. Or a sensor malfunction telling the elevator someone had called it when nobody had. Equipment breaks down. Happens all the time in caves. The moisture gets into everything eventually. But the pattern bothered me. Too deliberate, too steady. I set down my sandwich and kept watching. I set the sandwich down and grabbed the radio. Crystal's home number was programmed into the base station. Emergency contacts only. I'd never used it before. Probably nobody had used it in years except for actual emergencies, which I guess this qualified as. Flickering elevator lights in a deliberate pattern with nobody down here but me, and the door standing open when it should have been closed. The radio clicked through. Took maybe 4 rings. Cooper. Her voice came through scratchy with that faint Louisiana drawl she had, but sharper than usual, alert. She didn't sound like someone who'd been asleep. "Hey, it's Maurice. Sorry to call this late." "What's wrong?" Not a question. Statement. I told her about the elevator. Service level 750, doors open, lights flickering in a pattern. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. Nobody else on shift tonight because Leo called in sick. I kept my voice steady, just reporting facts. Silence on the other end. Long enough, I thought maybe the connection dropped. "Crystal? I'm here." That edge in her voice got sharper, urgent but controlled, which somehow made it worse. "Maurice, listen to me very carefully. Do not go near that elevator. Do not investigate. Do you understand?" "Yeah, I need you to go to your locker right now. The card I gave you on your first week, the laminated one. Do you still have it?" I thought about the top shelf. Spare batteries, protein bar that was probably stale by now, the card shoved behind both. "Yeah, it's in my locker." "Get it." Her voice carried weight I'd never heard before. Not panic. Worse than panic. The kind of certainty that comes from experience you don't want. "Retrieve it immediately and read every single word before you do anything else. Don't touch the elevator controls. Don't go down to 750. Just get the card and read it. All of it." "Okay, I'm serious, Maurice. Every word. Then call me back." The line went dead. I sat there for maybe 3 seconds with the radio in my hand, staring at the monitor. Camera 9 still showed the elevator car with its doors open, lights flickering. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. Steady as a heartbeat. Then I got up and headed to the staff area. The locker room sat off the main corridor near the monitoring station. Fluorescent lights, beige metal lockers that looked like they'd been installed sometime in the 80s, concrete floor with a drain in the center that I'd never seen anyone use. Smelled like old coffee and that particular staleness that comes from not enough ventilation. My locker was 3rd from the left, top row. Combination lock I'd set to my birthday because I'm not great at remembering random numbers. 2711. I spun it open. Top shelf had the usual stuff. Spare headlamp batteries still in the package. That protein bar, chocolate peanut butter flavor, definitely stale. A folded park service jacket I kept forgetting to take home. And behind everything, the laminated card. I pulled it out. Standard size, maybe a little smaller than a credit card, but thicker. Professional lamination job, the kind that doesn't peel at the edges. Dark blue text printed on white background. Clean, official looking. I'd skimmed it once 11 months ago and then filed it away because Crystal hadn't made it sound urgent at the time. Just supplemental protocols. Something to remember. The heading read, "Supplemental Protocol. Overnight. Staff only." Below that, 7 numbered items. I leaned against the lockers and started reading. 1. Never enter the caverns alone after 11 p.m. without verbal confirmation from surface staff that you are expected below ground. My stomach did something uncomfortable. It was 9:40 right now. I had an hour and 20 minutes before 11, and I was alone. Leo was supposed to be here, but he'd called in sick, which happens sometimes. Normal thing. Except now, I was wondering if it was actually normal or if there was a reason I'd ended up solo tonight. I kept reading. 2. If you hear footsteps from deeper sections when no one else is on shift, do not investigate. Report to surface immediately. Footsteps from deeper sections. The caverns went down past where the tours ran. Maintenance tunnels, undeveloped passages, areas closed to the public that I'd only been in a handful of times for equipment checks. I'd never heard footsteps down there, but now I knew that if I did, I wasn't supposed to check it out. Just leave. That was new information. 3. The natural entrance trail is closed after dark because something uses it to exit. My hands went cold. Not for safety reasons or due to low visibility or any of the normal explanations we gave tourists, just something uses it to exit. Capital S something probably, though the card didn't specify. Something that apparently left the caverns at night through the natural entrance, which was why we locked the gate at the bottom after the last tour came through. I'd locked that gate myself probably 200 times. Never knew why it mattered. 4. If humidity sensors in the King's Palace show readings above 98%, evacuate immediately. Do not attempt to investigate the source. The King's Palace sat deeper than the big room, down a steep trail most tourists didn't bother with. Humidity down there usually hovered around 92, 93%. Stable. I'd seen it spike to 95 once during heavy rains last spring, but 98 was pushing saturation levels that didn't make sense for a limestone cave with working climate control. Evacuate immediately. Not check the sensors or call maintenance. Just get out. 5. Never acknowledge anyone below ground who is not on the shift schedule. If approached by someone you do not recognize, proceed to the nearest exit without speaking. The weight in my stomach got heavier. Anyone below ground who wasn't on the schedule, which implied there might be people down here who weren't supposed to be, or things that looked like people. The card didn't specify, just said don't acknowledge them, don't speak, leave. I thought about the elevator with its doors standing open and lights flickering in that steady pattern. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. 6. The sound of dripping water is normal. Dripping water that stops when you listen for it is not. If you notice this phenomenon, leave the area immediately. Dripping water that stops when you listen. I'd heard that. Not often, but a few times over the past 11 months. I'd chalked it up to acoustics, the way sound traveled weird in caves, how you could hear something from one angle and lose it from another. Apparently that wasn't what it was. Apparently when the dripping stopped because you were listening, you were supposed to run. 7. If you find fresh footprints in closed areas, photograph them for records but do not follow. Mark the location and report immediately to your supervisor. Fresh footprints in areas that were closed, areas nobody should be walking through. I read all 7 rules again, slower this time. Each one made my stomach tighter. Not because they were complicated or hard to understand. Because they were specific. Too specific. The kind of specific that comes from experience, from trial and error, from figuring out what works when bad things happen. Crystal had given me this card 11 months ago, told me to keep it with me, to follow the procedures exactly when I needed them. She hadn't explained what they covered or why they mattered, just handed them over with that long eye contact and the repeated instruction. Follow them exactly. No improvising. I'd filed the card away and forgotten about it. For 11 months I'd been working overnight shifts in these caverns, alone or with Leo, walking through sections where something apparently left footprints, where dripping water stopped when you listened, where people who weren't on the schedule might approach you. For 11 months I'd been working alongside something I didn't know about, and now I was standing in a locker room at 9:40-something at night, alone, with an elevator flickering on level 750 in a pattern that felt wrong, and Crystal's voice on the radio carrying an edge I'd never heard before. I folded the card and put it in my shirt pocket. Then I grabbed my radio and headed back to the monitoring station. The weight of it sat in my pocket the whole way. Small piece of laminated paper. 7 rules. Everything I should have known from the beginning. I called Crystal back from the monitoring station, told her I'd read the card, all 7 rules, twice. She said she was coming in and to stay exactly where I was. Don't go near the elevator. Don't investigate anything. Just wait. So I waited. Watched camera 9 on rotation. Every 12 seconds it cycled back around. Elevator still there. Doors still open. Lights still flickering in that 3-beat pattern. I counted it out a few times. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. Too steady to be random, too deliberate to be a short. I didn't touch my sandwich again. Just sat there with lukewarm coffee and that card in my shirt pocket, feeling the laminated edge through the fabric every time I shifted in the squeaky chair. Crystal arrived 40 minutes later. I heard the main elevator descend first, the mechanical hum carrying through the cavern system in a way that sound doesn't normally travel. Then footsteps. 2 sets. Crystal came around the corner first, still in her off-duty khakis and Park Service fleece, hair pulled back tight. Behind her was Leo Aguilar. That surprised me. Leo had called in sick that afternoon. Sounded pretty rough on the phone too, all congested and tired. Now he looked fine. A little out of breath maybe, but fine. He wore his usual geological survey vest with about 15 pockets, wire-rimmed glasses, and carried a canvas bag over one shoulder that clinked when he walked. I didn't ask about the sick day. Figured it was part of whatever this whole situation was. "Show me the feed," Crystal said. I pulled up camera 9. She watched for maybe 20 seconds, arms crossed, face completely neutral. Leo stood behind her, glasses reflecting the monitor glow, watching the same flickering pattern I'd been staring at for the past 40 minutes. "That's not a malfunction," Leo said. His voice had a slight Texas border accent, slow and methodical. "Equipment doesn't fail in patterns." "I know," Crystal said. She turned to me. Those gray eyes didn't blink much. "You read all 7 protocols?" "Twice." "Good." She glanced at Leo, then back to me. "Maurice, Leo's going to explain some background. You're going to listen. Don't interrupt, don't ask questions yet. Just listen. Understand?" I nodded. Leo set his bag down on the desk. The clinking sound was glass on glass. Bottles, maybe. He pulled out the spare chair from against the wall, the one without the squeak, and sat down facing me. Crystal stayed standing. "The caverns go deeper than the public tours," Leo said. "A lot deeper. We've got the big room at 750 feet, King's Palace around 830, some smaller sections that push down to maybe 900. That's what's on the maps. That's what tourists see." He paused, making sure I was following. I was. In the 70s, the Park Service funded a full geological survey, wanted to map everything, find all the passages, document the whole system, standard stuff. They brought in a team from the USGS, 5 people, geologists, spelunkers, the works, professional crew. Leo took off his glasses and cleaned them on his shirt, put them back on. They went down past the developed sections, found passages that kept going, tight squeezes, vertical drops, chambers we didn't know existed. Kept mapping for about 6 weeks. Then, on their last scheduled descent, something went wrong. Crystal shifted her weight, didn't say anything. "They came back up," Leo continued. 4 of them. Should have been 5. My coffee had gone completely cold. I didn't touch it. The missing geologist was a woman named Winterwood. 34 years old, experienced, smart. She'd done surveys in Kentucky, New Mexico, all over the Southwest. Knew what she was doing. Leo's voice stayed even, factual. The other 4 team members said she'd been right behind them in a passage called the Devil's Spring. It's a narrow section about 1,100 feet down, past anything on the public maps. They were coming back up, single file, headlamps on. When they reached the junction chamber and counted off, Winter wasn't there. He paused again. Let that sit. They went back down immediately, searched for 6 hours, found nothing. No trace, no gear, no footprints in the mud where there should have been footprints. It was like she just stopped existing halfway through a tunnel. I thought about Protocol 7, fresh footprints in closed areas. Don't follow them. The Park Service brought in search and rescue, Leo said. Spent 2 weeks combing every mapped passage, every chamber, every crawl space they could access. Nothing. Winterwood was just gone. Crystal finally spoke. 2 weeks and 3 days after she disappeared, I came in for my morning shift. This was 1976. I was 25. I'd been working here about 2 years. Her voice had that dry edge, affected by desert air and limited conversation, or maybe just by telling this story. Winter was sitting in the gift shop, Crystal said, in one of those plastic chairs by the postcard rack, still wearing her survey gear, boots caked in mud, headlamp still strapped to her helmet, just sitting there. Was she hurt? I asked, then remembered I wasn't supposed to interrupt. Crystal didn't seem to mind. No, not a scratch, not dehydrated, not hypothermic. Physically, she was fine. But she wouldn't talk, wouldn't explain where she'd been, wouldn't even confirm her own name at first. We called paramedics, park rangers, the whole response team. She let them check her vitals, let them take her to the hospital in Carlsbad, stayed there for observation for 3 days. Then she resigned, wrote a 1-sentence letter, and quit. She never explained what happened, I asked. Never, Leo said. Not to the Park Service, not to her teammates, not to anyone. The other 4 geologists tried to talk to her. She refused to see them, refused to discuss the survey at all. She moved back east somewhere. Ohio, I think. Worked in an office. Died in 2019. I did the math. That was just last year, 5 months ago. After Winter came back, the Park Service sealed the deep passages, Leo continued. Welded steel gates across the access points, posted them as closed for safety reasons. Officially, it was because of structural instability. Unofficially, he trailed off. Unofficially, something down there took Winter for 2 weeks and brought her back wrong, Crystal finished. And the Park Service decided we didn't need to know what. The monitoring station felt smaller. The 3 screens glowed. Camera 9 cycled back around. Elevator still flickering. The protocols you read, Crystal said, those were written after Winter. Started as informal guidelines, things the overnight staff noticed and passed down. Got formalized in the 90s when I became supervisor. They're based on experience. Real events. Things that happened to real people working real shifts. Protocol 2. Footsteps from deeper sections when no one else is on shift. Protocol 5. Never acknowledge anyone below ground who isn't on the shift schedule. I touched the card in my pocket through my shirt. The elevator, I said. You said something called it? Leo nodded. The service elevator doesn't run on a normal call system. It requires a key card, physical contact. You swipe the card, you press the button, the car moves. There's no remote access, no wireless system, no way to call it from below without being physically at a call station. How many call stations are there? 3. Surface level, lunchroom level at 750, and maintenance access at 900. And nobody's down there. Nobody living, Crystal said. That hung in the air for a second. The climate control vents hummed. Water dripped somewhere distant. Something at one of those stations called the elevator, Leo said. Swiped a card, pressed a button, called the car down. Then got in or didn't. We don't know. But the doors are open and the lights are signaling. Signaling what? We don't know that either, Crystal said. But it's not random. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. That's communication. That's intention. I looked at the monitor. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats. What do we do? I asked. Crystal and Leo exchanged a look, some kind of unspoken conversation I wasn't part of. We go down, Crystal said. Natural entrance trail. There's a junction about 300 feet in that connects to a service passage. We can access the deep sections from there without using the elevator. Why would we do that? It came out more direct than I meant. Because if something called the elevator, it's moving, Leo said. And if it's moving, we need to know where it's going. He stood up, shouldered his canvas bag. The bottles clinked again. I caught a glimpse inside when he adjusted the strap. Salt. Mason jars full of salt. Maybe 6 of them. Crystal checked her watch. It's 10:38. We've got time before the shift change threshold. Maurice, grab your gear. Headlamp, radio, water. We're going down. I stood up. The chair squeaked one last time. Stay close, Crystal said. Don't wander off. Don't investigate anything on your own. If we tell you to run, you run. Understand? Yeah. Say it back. Stay close. Don't wander. Run if you tell me to. Good. We headed for the natural entrance trail. The natural entrance is the original way into the caverns. Before they built the elevator in the 50s, everyone walked down. It's a paved switchback trail that descends about 750 feet over the course of 1.25 miles, steep in places, railings on both sides. During the day, it's a popular route, people taking their time, stopping for photos at the Bat Cave and Devil's Den formations. Protocol 3 said it's closed after dark because something uses it to exit. We were going in, not out. I figured that was different. Or maybe I just hoped it was. Crystal led, Leo followed. I took up the rear. We all had headlamps. Mine was a Petzl Tika, pretty standard, bright enough for normal cave work. The beams cut through darkness that felt thicker than usual, heavier, like the air had weight. I'd walked the natural entrance probably 100 times during training and tour shifts. I knew every turn, every formation, every spot where the ceiling dropped low or the path narrowed, but I'd never walked it at night. Never walked it after the floodlights went off, and the tourist sounds faded, and the cavern settled into whatever it became when nobody was watching. It felt different. The limestone walls pressed in closer than I remembered. Our footsteps echoed wrong, bouncing back with a delay that didn't match the space. My headlamp beam didn't reach as far as it should have. It hit the darkness about 10 feet out and just stopped, like the darkness was solid. Nobody talked. Crystal set the pace, steady and deliberate. Leo's breathing stayed even behind her. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, following the light from Leo's headlamp, not thinking too hard about Protocol 3 or winter wood or elevators that moved on their own. We passed the Batcave entrance. Empty this time of year, migration season winding down. The opening gaped black and still. Then we passed Devil's Den, a formation that looked vaguely like a face if you squinted. Tourist favorite. I'd explained it probably 200 times. Natural limestone erosion, mineral deposits, pareidolia making us see patterns that aren't there. In the beam of my headlamp, it looked like it was watching us. I kept walking. The trail curved down, steeper now, the railings cold under my hand when I steadied myself on a rough patch. Crystal didn't touch the railings. Neither did Leo, just me. We descended maybe another 100 feet. My ears popped from the pressure change. The temperature dropped. Always 56 degrees in the caverns, that's what I told tourists. Constant year-round. Bring a jacket. It felt colder than 56. Then I noticed the sound, or the lack of it. Caves are never truly silent. There's always something, water dripping, air moving through passages, bats shifting in their roosts, the hum of climate control equipment, your own breathing, your heartbeat, something. But as we went deeper down the natural entrance trail, all of that faded. The dripping stopped, the air went still. Even our footsteps seemed to muffle, the echoes dying before they should have. Protocol 6. Dripping water that stops when you listen for it. Except I wasn't listening for it. It just stopped. I could hear my heartbeat. That was it. Just my pulse, thudding in my ears, echoing off the limestone walls in a way that made it sound like it was coming from outside my body, behind me, below me. Ahead in the darkness past Crystal's headlamp. Thud. 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 I stopped walking. Crystal and Leo kept going for a few steps, then noticed and turned back. What? Crystal's voice sounded muffled, distant, even though she was maybe 10 feet away. "The sound," I said. "It's gone." "I know," she said. "All of it. I know." Leo adjusted his glasses. "It happens sometimes. When they're active. The silence is a sign we're getting close." "Close to what?" "The threshold," he said. "The place where the mapped sections end and the deep passages begin." My heartbeat kept echoing. Thud, thud, thud. "Keep moving," Crystal said. "We're almost there." We kept moving. The silence pressed in. Complete. Total. I'd never experienced anything like it. Even in sensory deprivation, even in the quietest room, there's something. Tinnitus, blood flow, the sound of your own nervous system firing. This was different. This was absence. A void where sound should have been. I could hear my heartbeat echoing off the walls. Just that, nothing else. The big room opened up around us, and my headlamp beam just stopped mattering. That's the thing about the big room. Even with all the floodlights dimmed to overnight settings, it's too big to actually see the edges. 6 football fields. That's what I told tourists every single day for 11 months. Tonight it felt bigger. Crystal stopped at the threshold where the trail levels out. I nearly walked into her back. Leo moved to her right side, and I stayed left, the three of us standing there with our headlamps cutting 3 separate cones of light that didn't reach anything useful. The temperature was wrong. Should have been 56 degrees constant. I could see my breath. "Humidity check," Crystal said. Her voice came out flat and quiet, like she was trying not to wake something up. Leo pulled a handheld sensor from his canvas bag. It wasn't Park Service equipment, looked older with a cracked yellow plastic case and a dial display instead of digital readout. He held it up and waited. The dial climbed. 97.3, he said. "Still climbing." I knew what that meant. Protocol 4. Humidity above 98%. Evacuate immediately without investigating. We were 0.7 away from that threshold. "How fast is it climbing?" Crystal asked. Leo watched the dial. "Steady. Maybe 0.1 every 30 seconds. I did the math. We had maybe 3 minutes before we hit 98. Probably less. "Show me where," Crystal said. Leo shifted his bag and pointed his headlamp toward the center of the big room. The beam swept past the usual formations. Twin domes on the left, Rock of Ages straight ahead, the ceiling somewhere up there in the dark where I couldn't see it. Then his light stopped on the bottomless pit. I'd walked past the bottomless pit hundreds of times, literally hundreds. It's a formation near the center of the big room, roped off with velvet tourist barriers during the day, about 12 feet across and deep enough that when I dropped a rock down it on my second week, I never heard it hit bottom. The name's not official, but that's what everyone calls it. On tours, I usually told people it was at least 100 feet deep, possibly connecting to unmapped passages below. Gave them the standard line about respecting barriers and not throwing anything down there because we don't know what's at the bottom. Tonight I could see what was at the bottom. Something pale filled the pit almost to the rim. Glistening. That's the only word that fit. It looked wet but not liquid. More like something organic. Something that belonged inside a body instead of outside. The color was wrong too. Not white, not gray. Somewhere between the two with an undertone that made me think of things that never see sunlight. And it was moving, rising and falling, slow and steady, like breathing but bigger. I watched it for maybe 5 seconds before I realized the rhythm matched my heartbeat exactly. Rise when my heartbeat, fall in the space between. Rise, fall, perfectly synchronized. "Don't," Crystal said. But I was already walking toward it. I don't know why. Probably the same reason you touch a bruise to see if it still hurts. I needed to know if what I was seeing was real, or if 11 months of overnight shifts had finally broken something in my head. The velvet barriers were still there, posts and rope forming a neat square around the pit's edge. I stopped about 3 feet away. My headlamp beam hit the surface of whatever was filling the pit and just stopped, didn't penetrate at all. The pale glistening thing rose and fell, matching my heartbeat, and I could feel it somehow. Not hear it, feel it. Like a pressure change in my chest that came from outside instead of inside. Then I took a breath, a real one, deeper than usual because the cold air was doing something to my lungs. The rhythm changed. Now it matched my breathing. Rose when I inhaled, fell when I exhaled. Perfectly synchronized again, but to a different pattern, a different part of me. I held my breath for maybe 3 seconds to test it. The thing in the pit stopped moving entirely. I exhaled and it fell. Inhaled and it rose. Maurice. Crystal's hand closed around my upper arm and pulled, not gentle. She yanked me back hard enough that I stumbled and had to catch my balance. I turned to look at her. Her face was different. Not scared exactly, but something close to it. Something I hadn't seen on her before in 11 months of working under her supervision. "Original survey team," she said. 1976. You want to know what they found down there? I nodded. My heart was doing something weird, beating too fast and too hard, and I could still see the pale thing in my peripheral vision rising and falling with my breathing. Crystal kept her hand on my arm. Leo moved closer, his canvas bag clinking with the mason jars of salt inside. "They thought they were mapping a cave system," Crystal said. "Standard geological survey. 6 weeks of work, good data, solid maps. Everything normal until the last descent." She paused. I waited. They found chambers that didn't make sense. Passages shaped wrong for water erosion, formations that looked carved instead of grown. And in the deepest section they reached about 1,300 feet down. They found a space that was warm. "Warm," I repeated. 87 degrees, Leo said, in a cave system that should be constant at 56. Crystal's grip on my arm tightened slightly. They took samples, ran tests, tried to figure out what could generate heat that deep. Then Winter noticed the walls. "What about them?" "They were moving," Crystal said. "Not like an earthquake, slow, rhythmic, expanding and contracting like breathing," I finished. She nodded. "Like breathing. The caverns aren't just geological formations, Maurice. They're a digestive system, shaped over millions of years by something living in the deepest sections. Something old enough that limestone grows around it, that the cave formations are part of its body or its habitat or something we don't have words for." I looked back at the pit. The pale thing kept rising and falling with my breath. In, out. In, out. "Winter would," I said. "She didn't get lost." "No," Crystal said quietly. "She got tasted." Leo pulled out his sensor again without being asked. He checked the dial and his face did something I didn't like. 98.1, he said. The number hit me wrong. Protocol 4. Humidity sensors in King's Palace show readings above 98%. Evacuate immediately without investigating. We weren't in King's Palace. We were in the big room. But 98.1 was past the threshold. We'd crossed it. I'd crossed it. My breath came faster, and the thing in the pit rose and fell faster to match. Crystal's voice cut through the wet air. "We're evacuating. Now." I turned toward the trail we'd just descended. Took maybe 2 steps back before I stopped. The path didn't curve upward anymore. I mean, it should have. We'd come down the natural entrance trail. I knew that route by heart, every switchback, every marker, the exact angle where it levels out into the big room. The trail curved up and to the left. That was it. Simple geometry. Except now it didn't. Now the trail descended, straight down into darkness so thick my headlamp couldn't touch it. Not dim, not shadowy, just gone. Like someone had cut a hole in reality and the beam fell into it without making contact. I stopped walking. Crystal. She was already moving past me, probably assuming I was right behind her. She got 3 steps before she saw what I was looking at. Her headlamp swept across the trail. The beam hit that darkness and died, just stopped 10 feet out, absorbed completely. "That's not right," she said, which would have been funny if my lungs weren't doing something complicated with the air I was trying to breathe. Leo came up beside us. He didn't say anything, just looked at the trail that now went down instead of up, at the darkness that swallowed light like it was hungry. I turned back toward the pit. The pale substance was still there, still rising and falling with my too fast breathing, still watching. I figured that's what it was doing, watching. "We can't go that way," I said. Obvious maybe, but someone needed to say it. Crystal pulled her radio, keyed it twice. Static came back but wrong, choppy and wet sounding, with something underneath that might have been breathing. She tried again. "Base, this is Cooper. Do you copy?" More static. Then a voice that sounded like Crystal's own voice played backward, syllables stretched and distorted. She dropped the radio. It swung on the clip attached to her belt. Leo set down his canvas bag. The clinking sound echoed wrong in the space. Too many echoes, coming from directions that didn't have walls. He opened the bag and pulled out one of the mason jars full of salt. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Buying time." He unscrewed the lid. The salt inside was coarse, grayish white, the kind you'd use for de-icing roads. He walked toward the darkness, stopped about 5 feet from where the trail started its impossible descent, and poured a line across the entire width. The salt hit the stone in a steady stream. White line maybe 2 inches wide, unbroken from the left wall to the right railing. The darkness pulled back. Not much, just a few inches, like something had touched a hot stove and jerked away. And for maybe 3 seconds, I could see the trail the way it should be, curving up and to the left, paved switchbacks, metal railings, the same path we'd walked down 20 minutes ago. Then the darkness surged forward again. It hit the salt line and stopped. Didn't cross it, but it pressed against the barrier like water against a dam. And I could see the salt crystals starting to dissolve where the darkness touched them. Slow, but steady. The white line was turning gray at the edges. "That won't hold long," Leo said. He was already opening a second jar. I looked at the dissolving salt. Looked at the thing in the pit that matched my breathing. Looked at Crystal, who was staring at the blocked trail with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Not quite fear. More like the face you make when you realize you made a mistake and people might die because of it. And I remembered Rule 3. The natural entrance trail is closed after dark because something uses it to exit, not enter. Exit. My brain did something it's pretty good at. Connected dots I didn't know were related. The thing uses the trail to exit, after dark, every night probably, which means it goes somewhere, up, out, to the surface, to feed. That's what Crystal had said, right? The caverns were a digestive system, which meant something was eating. And if the trail was how it left, then right now at 10:40-something p.m. on a Thursday night, whatever lived down in those deep passages wasn't home. It was up there, on the surface, hunting. "We need to go down," I said. Crystal turned to look at me. "What?" "Down, not up." I pointed at the pit, at the pale substance that kept matching my breathing. "That thing's guarding the exit. It's blocking the way out because something else is using it to come back. But if that thing already left, the protocols exist for a reason, Maurice." Crystal's voice had that edge again, the one from the phone call. "We evacuate. That's the procedure. Can't evacuate if the trail's gone." She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I, really, except the answer I didn't want to say out loud. We were trapped. The elevator was compromised, the trail was blocked, and the humidity was at 98.1% and probably climbing. Leo poured another line of salt, this one parallel to the first, about 3 feet behind it. Insurance, I figured. "What are you saying?" he asked. Didn't look at me. Kept his eyes on the darkness pressing against the first salt line. I tried to organize my thoughts. Hard to do when your heart's doing double time and something's matching the rhythm. Rule 3 says the trail's closed after dark because something uses it to exit, not enter. Exit, which means there's a schedule, right? It leaves at night, goes up, feeds, comes back before dawn, probably. I took a breath. The thing in the pit rose with my inhale. So right now the deep passages are empty. Whatever lives down there is up there, on the surface. Crystal shook her head. You don't know that. I know that thing, I gestured at the pit, is guarding something. I know the trail's blocked. I know we can't stay here because the humidity's past threshold and we're breathing air that's 98% water. Leo straightened up. He looked at me, then at Crystal, then back at the pit. He's right, Leo said. Crystal rounded on him. Don't. About the guard. Leo capped the empty mason jar and set it down. That thing in the pit, it's not the predator, it's the watchdog. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, that's exactly what it was. Something left behind to make sure nobody went deeper while the main entity was gone, and to block the exit so nobody could leave, which meant the thing on the surface was the real problem. Crystal was quiet for maybe 10 seconds. I counted them, watched the salt line dissolve another millimeter, watched my breath steam in air that shouldn't be cold enough for that. If you're wrong, she said finally, we die down there. If we stay here, we die up here. I surprised myself with how steady my voice sounded. The trail's gone. The elevator's compromised. The humidity's past protocol threshold. We've got one option. 2 options, Crystal corrected. We can wait for the thing to come back and try to fight our way past it. Leo made a sound that might have been a laugh. With what? I've got salt and a mag light. I didn't have anything except my headlamp and a radio that picked up backward voices. Crystal probably had a pocket knife, maybe. Standard park service gear. Nothing that would fight off something that could block an entire trail with darkness. She knew it too. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped half an inch. The deep passages, she said. Not a question. Statement. Yeah. Past the sealed gates. If we can get through them. Leo picked up his canvas bag. 4 mason jars of salt left, clinking against each other. Gates were welded shut in '76, but the welds are 40-something years old now. Might be weak spots. Might be, might not be. But we were talking about it, which meant Crystal was considering it, which meant I'd already won the argument, or lost it, depending on how you looked at it. Crystal checked her watch. 10:43. We've got maybe 6 hours before dawn, maybe less. Before it comes back, I said. Before it comes back, she agreed. I looked at the thing in the pit one more time, still rising and falling with my breathing, still pale and wet and wrong, still watching probably. I made myself breathe slower, deeper, steady. The thing matched me, rose and fell like a lung, like it was teaching me something. Crystal walked past me, heading toward the far side of the big room, away from the natural entrance, away from the bottomless pit and the thing inside it, toward the back passages that led to King's Palace, and past that to the sections marked on the old maps, and past those to the sections that weren't marked at all. Leo followed her. I took one more look at the blocked trail, at the darkness eating through the salt line, at the space where the exit should be. Then I followed them both. We were going down. Into passages that shouldn't exist, past gates that were sealed for a reason, into spaces where winter wood got tasted and came back wrong. And somewhere above us, on the surface, something that used the natural entrance trail was hunting in the October night. I kept my headlamp pointed forward, kept walking, tried not to think about what we'd find in the deep sections or what would happen if we were still down there when the predator came home. We went down for 20 minutes, I know it was 20 minutes because I checked my watch at the start, 10:48, and again when we reached the door, 11:08. But the passages we moved through didn't match anything on the maps I'd memorized over 11 months. The King's Palace section should have ended at 830 feet. We kept going. Leo led. He'd stop every 50 feet or so, set down his canvas bag, pull out a jar of salt, and pour a line across the passage behind us, left wall to right wall, unbroken. The salt looked gray under our headlamps instead of white. Leo didn't explain why he was marking our route. Crystal didn't ask. I figured it out after the third line. We were making sure we could find our way back, that the passages wouldn't rearrange themselves while we were down here. The walls changed as we descended. At first, they still looked like normal limestone, the same beige-gray formations I'd seen every shift for almost a year. Stalactites hung from the ceiling in the usual places. Flowstone covered the walls in the standard frozen waterfall patterns. Then we passed some invisible threshold and everything looked wrong. The stalactites grew at angles that didn't follow gravity. Some pointed sideways. A few curved upward. The flowstone had textures that reminded me of something organic, not like frozen water, like skin that had calcified over millions of years. Crystal's headlamp swept across a formation that looked exactly like a rib cage. Huge, maybe 15 feet tall. The ribs curved down from the ceiling and disappeared into the floor. Limestone covered them, but I could see the structure underneath, the spaces between ribs. "Keep moving," Crystal said. We kept moving. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath again. My ears popped twice from pressure changes that shouldn't happen this far down. The caverns were supposed to stay constant, 56 degrees, stable pressure, predictable. These passages felt like we were entering something's body, going deeper into a throat. Leo poured another salt line. His fourth jar was half empty now. The passage narrowed. We had to turn sideways to squeeze through a section where the walls pressed close enough that I felt limestone against my chest and back simultaneously. My headlamp beam hit the rock 6 inches from my face. I heard Crystal breathing ahead of me, heard Leo's canvas bag scraping against stone. Then the passage opened into a junction chamber maybe 20 feet across. 5 tunnels branched off in different directions. Our headlamps couldn't reach the ceiling. The darkness above us felt solid. Leo walked to the center of the chamber and crouched down. He brushed his hand across the floor. Dust came away, revealing carved symbols in the limestone. Not natural erosion, deliberate cuts, geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This is it," Leo said. Crystal moved to the rightmost tunnel. She aimed her headlamp down the passage. The beam died after 10 feet, but I could see something metallic reflecting the light at the edge of visibility. We walked toward it, single file. The tunnel sloped down at maybe 15 degrees. My boots scraped on stone that felt smoother than it should, worn down by something passing through repeatedly over decades, or centuries. The steel door appeared in our headlamp beams. It filled the entire passage, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. Heavy industrial construction, the kind of door you'd see on a bank vault. Dark gray metal with rivets along the edges and a wheel lock mechanism in the center. The 1971 Park Service insignia was welded to the upper right corner, the arrowhead logo with National Park Service text and Department of the Interior underneath. Below the insignia, someone had welded a steel plate with engraved text, "Deep Survey Access, Authorized Personnel Only, Sealed by Order 3-4-76. March 4th, 1976. 3 weeks after Winterwood came back. Leo set down his bag and examined the welds along the door's edges. He ran his fingers across the seams where steel met limestone. "They did a good job," he said, "but 43 years is a long time." Crystal pulled a multi-tool from her belt. Leo produced a pry bar from his bag. I hadn't noticed it before, too focused on the salt jars. They worked together at the bottom right corner where the weld looked thinnest. Metal scraped against metal. The sound echoed wrong in the confined space. I stood back and watched. My job was apparently to be the person who didn't know what he was doing. That's me. The weld cracked after maybe 2 minutes. A gap appeared, just half an inch. Cold air rushed through from the other side. Not the constant 56 degrees, actually cold, maybe 40 degrees. I could smell something underneath the usual cave smell of wet limestone and minerals. Something organic. Decay, but old, ancient. Leo wedged the pry bar deeper. The gap widened to 3 inches, 6 inches. Crystal grabbed the edge of the door and pulled. I moved forward and grabbed it too. The metal was freezing against my palms. We pulled together. The door groaned and shifted. More welds snapped. The gap became a foot wide enough to squeeze through. Leo went first. He turned sideways and slipped through the opening, his canvas bag scraping against the doorframe. His headlamp beam swept across whatever was on the other side. I heard him exhale slowly. "Clear," he said. Crystal went next, then me. The space beyond the door was small, maybe 8 feet by 10 feet, a dead-end chamber carved into the limestone. Not natural formation. The walls were too flat, the corners too precise. Someone had excavated this space deliberately. Along the left wall, steel shelving units held equipment from the 70s. I recognized some of it from old photos. Survey gear, core sample containers, obsolete measuring instruments with analog dials and cracked rubber casings. Everything was covered in a thin layer of limestone dust. On the right wall, someone had bolted a metal desk to the floor. Standard government issue from 40-plus years ago. Gray steel with a single drawer. A folding chair sat in front of it. Papers covered the desk surface. Crystal walked to the desk. Her headlamp illuminated notebook pages, hand-drawn maps, technical diagrams, data tables. Everything was written in blue ink. Neat handwriting, small and precise. I moved closer and read the name at the top of the nearest page. Winterwood, survey log, day 41, 2/12/76. February 12th, 1976. The day before, she disappeared. I picked up the page. The paper felt brittle and cold. Winter's handwriting covered both sides in dense paragraphs with occasional sketches in the margins. I read the first paragraph. The entity responds to biological rhythms, heartbeat, breathing, brain activity. It synchronizes with living organisms that enter its range, which extends approximately 400 vertical feet from its core location at 1,347 feet depth. Synchronization appears to be how it identifies prey. Once synchronized, separation becomes impossible without specific countermeasures. I set that page down and picked up the next one. More technical description, measurements, observations about temperature variations and humidity patterns. Then halfway down the second page, containment is possible, destruction is not. The entity is too old, too integrated with the geological structure. Attempting to kill it would destabilize the entire cavern system. Estimated collapse radius, 12-15 miles. Surface damage would be catastrophic. My hands shook a little. I kept reading. The protocols we've developed aren't protection, they're appeasement. The entity requires biological matter to sustain itself. If it doesn't receive regular feeding, it will surface to hunt. The night shift system ensures a steady supply of potential prey. People who enter its range during peak activity hours when it's strongest. I looked at Crystal. She was reading a different page, her face expressionless. I picked up a third page. This one was dated February 13th, the day Winter disappeared. Only 3 sentences. I'm going to verify the core location. If I don't return, implement the protocols exactly as written. Keep it fed, keep it contained. That's all we can do. That was it. The rest of the pages were protocol drafts. 7 rules written and rewritten with annotations, changes in wording, clarifications. The same 7 rules Crystal had given me on a laminated card 11 months ago. I understood then. Completely. The night shift wasn't about monitoring equipment or checking bat colonies. It was about being available, being present in the caverns during the hours when the thing was most active, when it was hungry. Some people made it through their shifts without incident. Most people, probably. But every few years, someone would violate a protocol, investigate footsteps from deeper sections, or acknowledge someone who wasn't on the schedule or follow fresh prints in closed areas. And the thing would feed, just enough to stay satisfied, just enough to prevent it from surfacing completely. Crystal and Leo had been managing this for decades, hiring people for night shifts, training them, giving them the protocols, hoping they'd follow the rules, knowing that eventually someone wouldn't, knowing that person would disappear into passages that led to 1,347 feet, where something old enough to have limestone growing around it waited in constant 87-degree heat. I set down the papers. My throat felt tight. "We should go," Leo said quietly. He was checking a handheld sensor again. The dial showed 89% humidity. Dropping. Crystal looked at her watch. Dawn's close. I gathered Winter's pages, maybe 20 sheets total, and folded them carefully. They went into my jacket's inner pocket. Evidence. Or maybe just proof that someone had understood what we were dealing with before it was too late for her. We left through the gap in the door. Leo poured another salt line across the opening before we continued back up. His last jar was almost empty. The return trip took 15 minutes. The passages stayed stable. Leo's salt lines had worked. We followed them back through the junction chamber with the carved symbols, through the narrow section where walls pressed close, past the ribcage formation, through King's Palace, into the big room. The bottomless pit was empty, just a 12-foot wide hole with rope barriers around it. The pale substance was gone. The temperature was 56 degrees again, constant, normal. Our headlamps reached the ceiling and walls properly. Sound traveled the way it was supposed to. The natural entrance trail curved upward correctly, switchbacks and metal railings leading to the surface. We climbed in silence. My legs burned from the ascent. My watch showed 6:32 a.m. when we were halfway up. Gray light filtered down from the entrance above. Real light. Sunrise. We emerged at 6:47. The visitor center parking lot was empty except for Crystal's truck and Leo's sedan. The sky was that pale blue-gray color right after dawn. Cold air hit my face. Actual fresh air that didn't taste like limestone and humidity. I stood at the natural entrance and breathed it for maybe 30 seconds. Just stood there. Leo walked past me toward his car without saying anything. He got in and drove away. The canvas bag sat in his passenger seat. Empty jars. Crystal waited by the visitor center door. She held something in her hand. I walked over. My boots felt heavy. Everything felt heavy. She handed me a laminated card. Same size as the first one. Same professional lamination. Dark blue text on white background. The title read, Supplemental Protocol, Overnight Staff Only, Revised. 12 rules instead of 7. I read each one carefully. Rules 1 through 7 were identical to the original card. The 5 new ones started at number 8. 8. If humidity drops below 90% before dawn, the entity has returned to dormancy. Proceed with standard shift duties. 9. The service elevator may be called by the entity or its proxies. Never investigate without backup and salt lines. 10. Chambers past the 1976 seal are off limits except during containment verification, which occurs every 15 years on February 13th. 11. Winterwood's protocols must be maintained exactly. Deviation results in termination and potential loss of containment. 12. Night shift assignments are permanent. Personnel who reach deep sections cannot be reassigned to day shifts. You are now part of the contract. I read number 12 twice. Crystal's gray eyes didn't blink. You understand? I understood. The protocols weren't guidelines. They were a contract. I just signed it by going down to 1,300 feet and coming back up, by reading Winter's notes, by understanding what lived beneath Carlsbad caverns and why certain people worked overnight shifts. I was part of the feeding system now, permanently. Yeah, I said. I understand. Crystal nodded once. Your shift starts at 4 p.m. Don't be late. She walked to her truck and drove away. I stood in the parking lot holding the new card. 12 rules. The sun rose higher and turned the sky from gray to blue. Somewhere below me, at 1,347 feet, something old settled back into dormancy. Fed enough to wait another night. I put the card in my wallet, right behind my driver's license. That's where it still is.